Welcome to the Sanctuary. We are really excited for tonight to welcome Penny Lane back to the Sanctuary. Really, Penny spans the history of the Sanctuary. She actually cut her teeth learning how to edit on independent media in a time of war when we were back at the Hudson Mohawk Indie Media Center, like over 20 years ago. We are getting older together. And Amy Goodman was just getting really big then, and she had done a lecture here in Christ Church, and we had taped it, and we made an anti-war video about the Iraq War. And Amy Goodman traveled around the country with her book tour and agreed, after a lot of negotiation, like late night negotiation, to give us $1 for every DVD that she gave, kind of like a calling card as she would do her book tour. And with that, we literally bought the mortgage on the Sanctuary. And so that is the history, and Penny, you are a part of that beginning. And we thank you for that. And that's really what the Sanctuary is like. So many of you in this audience have been part of building this community and building this campus, which is now eight lots and buildings on one block here in North Central Troy. And we're still dedicated to the mission that we have of using art for environmental justice, social justice, Penny has come over the years. We counted it up. This is her 6th film here, and woo! And it started with independent media in a time of war, but then she came with Abortion Diaries in 2006. She came with Mame Faye, which had like all the oldest people in Troy here, remembering what it was like when there was like bordellos here. They were still alive. Penny's like, I gotta interview these people before they die, right? And they were all here. And there was a band. Oh, hopefully. I mean, it was amazing. She brought Our Nixon here in 2013. She brought Hail Satan in, Nuts in 2016, Hail Satan in 2019, and today we are going to see a uniquely different kind of film where Penny makes herself the character of her film, which is pretty exciting. Before we start, Penny has told me to say that she's not going to come up because we're going to hear her talk for 1 hour and 45 minutes. And then she will come up and do Q&As. When we do Q&As, we'll have a mic over here. You can come in over here. I want to thank all of the staff of the Sanctuary for all their support, and also the volunteers. You see a 3-camera shoot here. People downstairs, we're making a document. We actually have created over 800 events over the history of the Sanctuary and have an archive of them all. So this is joining the archive. I also want to let you know that next week we have Chris Hedges coming a week from tonight. This was just confirmed. He considers this place to be his like house production space. He's like, I want to make a video, and he usually gets like 1 million hits with the videos when he comes here. So he's coming next week, and then a few days after that, we're having our holiday celebration, our Peace and Justice Holiday Celebration, which is an annual event. We want to invite you all to come for that, and also this is really celebrating the North Central Troy community right here. I want to thank NYSCA, New York State Council for the Arts, the Arts Department, and the School of Humanities, Arts, and Social Sciences. This is an iEar Presents event here at the Sanctuary. And with that, we are really, really excited to see your new film, Penny. Penny's in the audience and will come up on stage afterwards. So let's give her a big hand. Thank you.
I need to stand up, but I'm just very tired. Can you see me? Yeah. Okay, good.
Hi. We spoke earlier about karmic debt and whatnot. I noticed a little bit at the end where you said it did not wind up making you feel like a better person for doing it. Mm-hmm. So, in other words, my motivation for wanting to do so was to feel like less of a shitbag. Yeah. That's not the way to solve shitbag syndrome, is it?
Okay, well, whoa, hello. The first thing to say is that if you go into a hospital and you tell the social worker that that's why you want to do this, they will turn you down. Okay. So don't say that. That's like, again, it's like, what do we accept as an acceptable reason for doing this? It's like a really weird line you have to walk. And if you say it's because like you're worried that you're a bad person or you've done bad things and you want to make up for it, they're not going to like that reason. So I do think like maybe I do think there is like a kind of quiet satisfaction that I can feel about it. Like it didn't really fundamentally change my life at all, but it is harder to think that I'm like a useless piece of shit. It's a little harder. That's about as good as it's gonna get for you though. So yeah. I personally think it's a good reason to donate. I really do, but I just want to caution you that they will turn you down if you tell that to the hospital. Yeah, you need a better story.
Penny, that was really great. Thank you. I had no idea that you'd be able to follow this topic into like scientific, historical, legal, psychological, and ethical realms.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, certainly by the end, were there the other realms and dimensions that you found yourself mulling over, but maybe had to put aside because a movie can only be so long?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. Yeah, I think there was like, a little more about religion that I wanted to do, and like maybe a little more about like kind of having come from like an Irish Catholic background and like feeling like maybe there was something about sainthood and Catholicism that was like bumping around somewhere in my head, and I'd had some scenes about that. And a little more about Judaism and like certain ideas just about altruism and goodness and like, sort of all this stuff, and it was just too much. And then the other thing to say is that like there's not enough about anything that I brought up in the film. Like it's a little bit of like a smorgasbord, especially in that middle section where it's like, oh yeah, like there's a whole bunch of really important policy issues that you should like at least be aware exist, even though we don't have time to go into them. There's one scene about whether we might want to think about a different system for encouraging organ donation. That could be obviously its own film. The history of transplant, the kind of idea of moral progress and how it plays into scientific innovation, and there's a lot of dogs that died to make this miracle technology available to us, and I think that matters. So there's just like a lot there, and it was such a big topic, and I just had to like kind of draw a circle at a certain point. It just had to be like, it's already getting kind of long, like I'm not sure we can stuff much more in, but yeah, I would say the main thing that got cut was the more religious stuff. Yeah, because I feel like that's where you're kind of casting about, thinking about like altruism, and that's kind of like where you end up going in a lot of cases, is to like the great religious traditions of the world. Thank you for your question. Is it okay that I'm on the floor, by the way? I'm asking the videographer over here. Have I destroyed your shot? You're good? Okay. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Penny. How are you?
Good.
Thank you so much for the film. I have two kind of filmmaking questions. One, how did you find your experts, and did you have other experts you're like, no, I'm not really into you, in terms of creating characters in the film?
Yeah.
And the second question is, man, I already just forgot the second question.
Okay, well, I'll answer the first one and you'll remember it. Okay, so I love my experts in this film. There's, 4 people, the bioethicist Jacob, the neuroscientist Abby, the incredibly handsome and charismatic transplant surgeon, Dr. Melanson. The camera loved him. He loved the camera, and Sally Satel, who's like the sort of policy expert and the only recipient that you hear from in the film. So I really just like my philosophy about casting talking heads is like really to try to have as few as possible and try to like cast really thoughtfully. So like, I know I'm gonna need like people to hit like, I don't know, these 20 topics. Like I wanna try to get people who can hit at least 5 of them, right? So that we're kind of like able to spend more time with each person. So there's like a million bioethicists who would talk to me on camera about organ transplant, like a million, like there's probably some in this room. But Jacob had done the psychosocial evaluations at a hospital for 10 years. So he had like 2 little tick marks next to his name. And then he was just like super funny and like had a really weird sense of humor. So he just was like the one. So it's like, who do I want to talk to? Who do I think is going to actually give me time? And that's a big issue, especially with the transplant surgeons. Like, they're just super busy saving lives. So they're not like, they're like, yeah, I'll do an interview. It's like 20 minutes, you know, and I'm like, no, I'm going to want to spend like kind of the whole day with you and then also film you at church if I can. And that was another example because he was a Catholic. So that was another reason that I wanted him, because he had this like other aspect to his transplant, his ideas about transplant. He had tied really closely to his Catholicism, and as I said before, that used to be a bigger part of the film. So it's mostly like, you know, you're out there, it's easier to cast experts than ever because everyone's done a podcast or like has a YouTube video or something, so you're just like, you know, creating spreadsheets and like thinking about these people and what categories to put them in, and I didn't interview anyone that I didn't use for this film. I have in the past, I'm sure I will again, but in this case, like, I was just very slow and very deliberate about choosing people. And I do think it's like people I just feel like I'm gonna be able to like relate to and talk to. Like, I became really good friends with Abby Mars. She's like a good friend. Like, these are people I like. What was your other question? Did you remember?
I do have it now. It's related to an interview that I once read that you'd given about creating rules for yourself for films, and like in Our Nixon, you didn't want to use still photos. So were there any rules in this film that you kind of followed?
Great question. Yes. I really like had to keep reminding myself that it wasn't really a movie about organ transplantation, or I should say it's not really a movie about kidney disease. That's really the thing, because it would kind of just keep sort of going in that, like, you know, because it's a important topic and like it's obviously related, but I had to keep reminding myself that like the purpose of the film was to tell the story of a donor, which had never been done. And that was really hard to stick to because, again, like the story of the recipient is the story that you're used to hearing and frankly makes a better narrative. Like, it's an easier narrative to tell. So it was super challenging to like figure out even how to stick to that rule, you know, to be honest, but it really just had to be like, this is about altruistic donation. It's like a very specific topic, and like there's all these other things, and I have to just be like, it's about altruistic donation. It's about the mystery of why I think this is so simple and obvious, and no one else thinks that. Like, it feels like no one else thinks that. That's what the movie's about. So that was kind of the rule. I'm trying to think if there were any other formal rules, but I think that was the main thing. And then it was just being very careful and deliberate about like settings and like thinking about where we were putting our experts and like where I was putting myself. And the character that I created was like, we talked in the workshop before this about like the idea that when you take a real person and you make them into a documentary character, what you're doing is like creating a persona for them. It's like a sliver of who they are. And the sliver of who I was in the movie was like a person with basically no friends, which is not true. You know, it was like a lonely lady. So all the like, you know, shots of Penny, she's alone in her apartment, right? Like until the end. And that was kind of like one of the rules that we had set, was like this kind of feeling of like isolation was really important to like bring out. So we'd shot scenes with like groups of my friends, like talking about my decision and all, and we just took it all out because it was taking away from the persona, because I had really honed in on this like idea of isolation and the yearning for connection, and that had to be like reflected in the material. So yeah, that was some of it. There's probably more I could go on, but I'm sure people have other questions. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Hi, Penny. Thank you. It was a brilliant, very beautiful,
Thank you.
hysterically funny, and powerful film.
Thank you.
I love all of your work. You just answered, actually, one of my questions, which was about the recipient, like that you didn't, which very interesting. Some filmmaking questions. In terms of the edit on this film, like, I assume you have an editor you've worked with a lot, but how much did their input help in shaping the film itself? And, well, answer that part first.
Yeah, totally. Like, so the edit was like really a nightmare, to be honest, because part of the issue with doing a film where you're the protagonist is that you have access to that person, and you can always be like, let's just go into the VO booth and like do another thing. And so I was constantly calling upon myself to go back in, and like there was no limitation on my access to the protagonist, and that caused like endless hell. Like it was just horrible because I'd have an idea for a scene and then I would just go do it, you know? So we had like hundreds of just like bad ideas that went too far because I didn't have to be more disciplined about it, you know? And I didn't have any idea who the character was or what her deal was or like how people would personify this character and like what are her characteristics, like how would you describe, you know? All the stuff that I normally am very good at was like very hard because I had no perspective. So my editor was like the most important person in the movie because I just had to like place myself in her hands and be like, what do you, who's Penny? Like what about her life story is relevant to this? Because there's a lot of stuff that might seem relevant to me that didn't communicate. It didn't read as anything to other people. Like, you know, so there's very little about my like life story in the film, but the little bits that are there are very like deliberately chosen by someone who is not me, essentially, because I had no idea. Like, what do you need to know about Penny to care about her in this film? And I didn't have the answer. So, yeah, so my editor was huge, and also she just has a very expressive style. So like her kind of voice is all over the film, like, you know, just creating these beautiful moments and like montages especially.
Yeah, it was beautifully edited.
Yeah, thank you. And my composer was so incredible.
I was gonna ask about the
She'd
sound,
never
too.
done a score before. I just
sound
like
was
found her. I just found her on Spotify.
Really?
And I was like, I really think I want a theremin score. And then I was like, theremin, you know? And there's this woman in Berlin, and we just did it, and she was just like such an amazing creative voice.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And archival footage, you always do. In terms of this, like, do you have a whole team, or is this stuff that you found prior to on your own primarily?
This one I found on my own because I spent a lot of time in like medical archives. Just if I was going to London, I would go to the medical archive there. If I was going to Toronto, I kind of like made it a little research project. So I had found most of that myself, just like at different medical archives. That's where I started to be like, fuck, a lot of animals have died for this. Like, that's like all you get, like that's the main thing you learn in the medical archives. It's just like endless images of mostly dogs, you know, wagging their tails. Like, it's so incredibly heartbreaking. It's hard to like have a very simplistic view of this miraculous technology when you spend a lot of time with that stuff.
And the last, for now at least, the reception of the film has since the film been released, have you had a different experience of the whole experience through the release of the film?
Oh, totally, because that's how you finish the film, and for me, finishing the film was like finishing the experience. And so, yeah, no, it's been really good. Like, now I feel like I have a better ending, like this conversation, like this is the ending, kind of, you know? Like, there's this whole thing where it's like, this character is like looking for connection, you know, and like, this is how I do it. This is hello, like, this is the connection, you know? That's what I did with the experience to make it meaningful to me. So it's been amazing. Hi.
Hi, so I have a question.
Don't cry.
Okay, I'll try not to. I have a few reflections and then a question. You know, it's like in documentary classes, I'll like show students The Thin Blue Line as an example of a documentary that saved a person's life. And I'm sure that this documentary, you probably have heard stories of people, you've saved other lives other than your own kidney. Yeah, which is so mind-blowing, because you've done all kinds of fun films, and this film is really fun, and it has humor and wonderful, but it's also, you know, really complex and painful and extraordinarily intimate, like your most intimate film. And in a way, you broke your own rule, because it's not just about altruism. It's like about your incredible strength. Yeah, and I mean, I've known you for so long. I mean, it's like you're really strong. And so here's my question. What's the relationship between donating a kidney and making a documentary film?
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, just to address the first thing first, like even before I ever even made the film, like just talking about being a donor on Facebook or in conversations with people, like I know a lot. I mean, I know at least like 5 or 6 people from before the film ever was made who ended up donating because I just told them about the idea. I mean, it's like I'm not hard selling it, obviously. You've seen the film. Like, if anything, I'm trying to weed people out, to be honest. It was a lot harder than I expected because I feel like a lot of the people who are really into this topic and who are advocates and activists make it sound like nothing. Like, they're like, it's nothing. And it's like, not fucking nothing. Like, so maybe it is for them. I don't know. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but for me, it's like, it was very important that I show that this was like a real sacrifice. And to give myself credit, it took real courage. I was very scared, like really scared. So I feel like, for anyone who's like, I'm too scared of surgery, you probably are. I just didn't know. Like, I didn't know that I was so scared of surgery. I never had surgery before. Anyway, so there's that. But the second part, the relationship between donating a kidney and making a documentary film. I mean, I feel like in this, that's interesting. It's like a sacrifice and a gift, Like, it's like, in that sense, it kind of has a relationship. But I always felt like making this film was similar to giving a kidney because this film in particular felt like a calling. Like, it didn't feel like I had a choice. Like this, I was going to make this film, and I had a lot of reasons to not want to. Like, I still have a lot of reasons not to want to. I didn't want to be in this movie. I didn't want a lot of it, like, really not appealing to me at all. I'm not Morgan Spurlock. I'm not like, this is how I make movies. Like, I'm in them. Like, I'm never gonna do this again. It was horrible. But it did feel like not a choice. It felt like obvious that I had to do it. So I think that was the thing that felt similar. Hi.
I have like a million questions, although many have been asked and answered, so thank you for that. 2 remaining. One is the decision to include the one little line about the abuse that you've experienced, because I feel like you could have easily just left that one little line out, and you still would have been telling part of the story there.
Yeah.
What went into the decision to keep that in?
Well, I think on the one hand, like, what made into the decision? I mean, it was true. That was the first thing. Like, that conversation happened. And I thought it was interesting that part of the psychosocial evaluation was actually questions like that. Like, have you ever been abused or have you ever been raped? Like, they were trying to figure out whether I was going to feel okay with this. I think this was my interpretation of these questions. Whether I was going to feel violated or whether I was going to feel harmed in some way. And I think in particular, like, that there are people who have a very negative reaction to being out, like, under anesthesia, and then, like, having things done to their body. Like, it's just a weird, like, I think that people have, like, can have pretty strong reactions to that, and that was part of it. So that's what they asked about it, and I answered it, and I wrote about it in my diary, so there it was, right? So I was, like, pulling that diary, and I edited it down. So there were times where that wasn't in, and there were times where it came back. And, the kind of redaction is like me being like, you don't get to know everything about, like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't need to know that. But I do feel like it's, like, somewhat relevant. I feel like there's something in the story, and it's hard for me to say. If my editor were here, she'd probably have a better answer for you. But I think there's something in the story where, like, you sort of have to have a sense of, like, a trauma. You sort of have to have a sense of, like, a reason for the isolation, like a reason for the kind of lack of something there. And I feel like I was sort of trying to gesture at that. But also it was just true. I don't know. So it was there. What else did you want to ask?
I mean, there's so many, but...
and it was similar with the detail about my grandmother being schizophrenic. That, like, went in, that came out, that went in, that came out. We lost it for, like, a year, and it came back in the last moment because I felt like, oh, actually, this is really relevant because this character has fear around being rejected because of, like, a mental illness, right? Like, a sort of the idea that she would be, like, deemed too mentally ill. And so it felt like, oh, that's a good way to, like, help plant that seed to just reference a history of mental illness in the family, because that's the sort of thing that might disqualify you in certain contexts.
Yeah, it was, I was curious about like the things that you cut out, because it felt like you were super raw and open, but of course you're making decisions about that. And I am a naive film watcher. I'm not a maker, so I wasn't thinking of you as like constructing a character for yourself. Yeah. But the question that I have remaining is like, throughout this, you're doing this like waffle thing, like you can see, you're like, have I, is this really what I wanted to do? I was wondering, like, do you feel like you have to because you're in the middle of making a film about it?
People have asked that. Like, no. I mean, I really, there was no turning back, really ever, but particularly once that recipient had been notified. Like, this to me is also a service. Most people who say they're going to do this back out, don't be one of those people. Like, or do be one of those people, but don't involve a recipient in it. You know what I mean? Like, figure it out before it gets to that stage. I think a lot of people get to the stage where I got to, where they were like, I'm scared. Actually, I'm really super scared. And they back out. And I just think that's horrible. Like, it's like bad etiquette. Like, this is like a weird thing that we should have some etiquette around. It's like bad, So for me, as soon as the recipient was identified and notified, like, I knew that was for sure. So it wasn't the film that kept me doing it. Probably the film would have been better in some way if I'd failed and, had to make that story. But I did want to say, too, like, the character thing, I just want to be clear, like, it's an accurate portrayal of me. There are people in the room here who know me, and they'd be like, yeah, it seems right. Like, so, it's not like, it's like a false, like, front that I'm putting up. It's just like you have to make decisions, and it has to just be a sliver. And so you have to be really conscious about like which particular things about this persona that I've made are relevant to this. And it's not a lot, really. Like, there's a lot more to my life, and I do have a lot of friends who would have been in the hospital with me if I had asked them to be, but it would never have occurred to me to ask them to be, and that's why my film crew was there. Like, there's a lot of stuff. You could just go on and on and on about all the things that are left out. And that's normal. That's just filmmaking. Thank you for your questions.
Last question.
All right. Oh, it's like a real episode of like, this is your life for me. You gotta work that mic. There you go.
No, that's good. That's good. All right.
Hi, Jerry.
It's like full circle. Hi, Penny.
It is.
Penny, I have a couple of things I want to ask. One is, this is so fabulous. How can we get it distributed so everybody can see it? Where can we get copies of it? Oh.
You're doing great. So,
copies?
Yeah, it's
How
not
can we
it's
see
not
it?
out yet. Like, we're still working on a plan for it, but it'll be more widely available sometime next year, like early next year, and you'll find out.
Okay.
We'll tell you.
Okay. And the second is, do you have any idea of the recipient, of who received your kidney and how that has worked out for them?
So I don't really. The transplant center a few times said he, so like, I guess it's a he. That's really the only info I have. And this was interesting because I wanted this to be anonymous. And I make a joke in the film about how it's like about how I don't want any complicated relationships. That's a joke. I mean, that might be a little true, but it's a joke. Two, mainly it was like, there's this like kind of feeling, there's a kind of idea in the world of transplant of the gift of an organ being like incommensurate, like what do you get that person for Christmas kind of thing. Like, there's a way that like the gift is too generous and can create a sense of obligation that can be burdensome. Not always, but it can be burdensome to the recipient. And so part of what I was trying to do was relieve someone of that burden. That said, at some point I realized, I shouldn't assume that they would feel that way. Like, maybe it would be more, maybe they would want to say thank you or meet me or whatever. So I told the transplant center that I was open to it if they wanted to. But I never heard anything, so I'm kind of relieved because I really did want it to be an anonymous gift. Like, that's how I conceived of it and like kind of what I wanted. So I'm glad about that. There was like for a while in the film a scene where I tried to like statistically create the most likely person who this went to and like develop empathy for them. It didn't work, but it was an idea. It was kind of an idea of just trying to express a little bit of the demographics of who ends up in the situation, like who it's likely to be in a way. And some of that stuff comes up with Dr. Melanson when he talks about how the people who have the most kidney disease have the least access to transplantable, like good options for living donors. And that's a huge issue, like a huge issue. It's true that if you're the CEO of a company, you're probably gonna find a donor.
So the other question I
Yeah.
have is, does the donor have access to your information, and might that person actually watch this film, you know, see this film somewhere and say, oh, I wonder if that was me. Maybe
August.
Maybe you'll have a lot of people saying, oh, Penny, I bet it was me.
Yeah, it might be. That'd be really fun, actually. That'd be really fun. I mean, we were it's funny because we were like in the recovery ward at the same time. Like, if I really wanted to know, I could have figured it out. Like, there's not that many rooms on the hallway. I really didn't want to know. But yeah, it'd be fun if people started contacting me and saying, it was me. It was me. I'll take credit for all of them.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other questions? Great. Thanks, everyone. It's so meaningful, as always, to be here at the sanctuary, and thank you, Branda, and everyone for making it happen. I really appreciate it. It's really special to share this film with you guys. Wow. So thanks.
Thank you for your art and for your brain and for your
Let's just
giant
thank each
heart.
other all night. Thank you, Jerry, for letting me film in your living room when I was making the Main Faye movie. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks. Have a good night.